I'm thrown against the Terminator 2 pinball machine. There was a gun that pulled the trigger, and I was assaulted, thrown on the ground, handcuffed, and put into a police car. Go to a wet market. So a wet market is where all the bloody meat's hanging, and
Yeah.
you guys have seen. You know what I'm talking about, right? That's where you get
COVID.
COVID. Right? And there's
God.
no reason any of us should have survived or walked away from that.
Look at that. Yeah, episode 421 of They Spread the Show. International podcast produced with Jordan Mendoza. Hey, Saeed, nice to see you again. Jordan
Always good
is
to be
in
back.
North Atlanta, Georgia. And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Perfect. Yeah. So I guess if we want to talk just like current day and time, I'm a father of 5. That's right, 5 human beings, 3 boys, 2 girls, all the way from 2 years old up to 17 years old. Actually, my oldest is a senior in high school. He's about to turn 18, about to start college next year, and I still feel like a kid myself. So it's fun being a parent that is tries to stay young. I still breakdance actively. I actually teach a class tonight, 7 p.m. in my garage, teaching people how to the basics of breakdancing. So I'm somebody that's very active. I like to be active, not just in, I like to play sports. I play basketball a lot. Love to hang with the kids in the backyard, doing whatever. And then also I serve. I'm a big servant-hearted person. I love to give back, and so we serve at our church. And this Saturday we do a serve day where we go out and actually serve in the community. I'm going to be working at a thrift store. I hope I can sell some stuff. That'd be pretty fun, but I'm sure they're going to have me like stocking shelves and things like that. But married to my beautiful wife, Natalie, actually, we've been together 20 years this year, so from when we first started dating, and it's been an exciting ride. So that's just a little bit about me today.
Wow, that's a great intro. And blaze your own trail. You have your own podcast and businesses too.
Yep.
And I'm curious about like how old were you when you had your first child?
Yeah, so I was the bright age of 22 years old.
Wow.
22,
Whoa.
a baby having a baby, right? And in those years, I'd love to just share kind of my background, origin story, and then we'll eventually get to when our son was born and how challenging those times were and kind of what happened next. But I'd love to kind of rewind a little bit if that's okay.
Let's
and
rewind.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, let's
yeah,
rewind
let's
as
give
far
some
back as you
context.
can.
So I was actually born in Portland, Oregon, so in the Pacific Northwest. Such a beautiful part of the country. I don't know if you guys have ever been up to Portland, but man, so pretty. It's green year round because it rains 6 months a year, and so definitely I actually enjoy rain. Believe it or not, a lot of people hate it, but to me it reminds me of home. And I think when you can have something that relates to home, it's something that sticks with you. And so I grew up really poor. Food stamps, government assistance, and a lot of it was because my mom was actually born in 1958 with one lung. And when she was born, the doctors told my grandmother, they said, she's probably not going to live to 18. She's definitely not going to be able to have any kids because of the capacity of childbirth on her body. And, my mom, had different plans. She was a fighter. She ended up having 5 boys, right? And she lived to 54 years old. And so
Wow.
she kind of took that hand of cards she was dealt and she surpassed the expectations. And man, she was such a great human. She taught me a lot about kindness. She taught me how to have a sense of humor. She definitely gave me this gift of gab conversation. You're just talking to everybody, not being afraid of people judging you. And so, my mom definitely meant a lot to me. And, when she passed away, that was like a really, really big loss. And I almost felt, I definitely felt lost as a man, like without mom. It's like, what do I do? What's my life going to look like? And so when I was younger, really, if I want to kind of talk about pivotal moments, what have I been through in my life? And I like to share these stories because I'm a big believer that adversity gives us strength. It enables
Right.
us to see
Very true.
through a lens that a lot of people can't actually see through and frankly may never experience. And so when I was in
Jordan-
fourth, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Jordan, to interrupt you right before you get into that.
Yep.
It's like a lot of people are like, yeah, life's not fair, nothing's fair, you know what I mean? Oh, I'm at a disadvantage, I'm a victim, things aren't fair. But your mom was born with one lung, you know, and despite those odds, she was able to live much longer than they thought she would and give and create, you know, and give life to, you know, you and your siblings. And it's an
100%.
amazing story. And it's, you know, I love hearing stories like that because it just always grounds me, makes me feel humble and to be grateful for what I have, you know.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%.
Not only
Yeah,
that,
and
I think she also did not want to claim the title of being a victim, and
sure.
she wanted to be the fighter that you said. So what's your opinion on like, on that mentality? The people that just claim victimhood and the people who don't.
Honestly, I think that the people that claim it, they don't know any better. They don't have resources. They don't have people that are in their corner that are saying, hey,
Hmm.
there's another side to this, because encouragement goes a long way. Having people in your environment that can actually be a positive influence, that's unfortunately in this world, it's not something that everybody has. And I was fortunate to have a mom that told me I could do whatever the heck I wanted to do, and I believed her. I still believe her to this day. I still have that confidence that if I want to tackle something, there's the only thing that's going to stop me is me. And man, when you have that, when you have that chip on your shoulder and you have that edge, it makes life very interesting. Because
Yeah,
there's a lot.
definitely.
Listen, I fail a lot, but it's because I'm trying a lot. It's because I'm testing a lot. I'm not afraid to put myself out there, and that's something that it's worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that kind of atmosphere that's created by the person is infectious, and it just makes you want to follow suit. And, you know, with all the support that they're giving, especially when it's unconditional, it's very it supports your mindset of becoming wanting to do something better for yourself, just
Yeah,
constantly wanting to work and having a good
Hmm.
work ethic.
100%.
It's
Yeah, and
it's
and
very
so
interesting. Can I also comment that, you know, I started
sure.
realizing this about myself a little bit that like I remember like when I was especially a little bit younger, you know, when I didn't have everything I had now, like a house and everything that's nice, you know, it's like I used to grind a lot harder. I used to hustle a lot harder. And now I'm kind of feeling like now that things are nice, I'm like, can't I just relax for a bit? I don't want to hustle as hard, you know, this is kind of the things. I mean, I'm still a hustler. I still, you know, work a lot and every hour of the day, you know, I'm still like thinking and planning and doing things, but it's like you know, I do like understand how like when your life becomes so nice, you end up not wanting to do things, you know, and you just want to sit down and relax, which is kind of you know, the opposite of what I aspire to be. Because for me, what's motivating right now is like, who do I want to be in the future? You know, who are the people I look up to, and who do I want to be? So, yeah, it's kind of tricky because you're everyone wants to have a good life, but sometimes having, you know, a comfy life is not exactly what you want.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. No. And no, it definitely can be a double-edged sword for sure. So yeah, I'd love to share quick. So three pivotal
go for
moments,
it.
right? Well, let's start. We'll go back to fourth grade, and so the end of fourth grade. I don't know why, guys, but we had a picnic. It was like we were celebrating going to fifth grade, and I didn't understand it because traditionally it's kindergarten through fifth. And I was like, why are we having a picnic at the end of fourth? But I was happy. We were, it's tetherball, it was baseball at the park, kickball, all these different games and food. And I was up to bat. So I grabbed this baseball bat and I get up and I swung and I missed and I kind of spun around. You know how when you miss, the momentum carries your body. And the
Yeah.
bat actually flew out of my hands and it landed under a massive Douglas fir tree. And so I run over to retrieve the bat. I grab it. I stand up. There's a beehive on my head. And so literally I start getting stung. I'm running. The bees, it's like a cartoon, seriously. The bees are chasing after me. I'm doing somersaults. Kids are running away from me. Teachers are running away from me because they see this trail of bees. And then finally the good teachers grab coolers. They dump them on me. They start picking all these bees. I got stung 53 times in fourth grade.
Holy,
And so,
wow.
that taught me that I can handle some pain. Luckily I wasn't allergic because we wouldn't be on this podcast right now. I wouldn't have
Yeah.
survived that. But that was kind of a pivotal moment for me, and it also showed me that in panic situations, different people act differently. Like there were adult humans running away from me, with the kids, and then there were some other ones that decided to help, right? And so it kind of showed me situational awareness a little bit in what
Mm-hmm.
happens in these types of when these types of things take place. And so we'll fast forward. So being poor, growing up with food stamps, not having a lot of money. My mom had one lung; she couldn't work, and so she would go to the dog races, which is like greyhound racing. I don't know if they've had that where you guys are from. That she would play bingo to try to win the bonuses, and that way we could have school clothes and stuff like that. She hustled, right? You mentioned hustling. She was the original side hustle queen, before they existed. And so we moved a lot, man. We moved probably 14 times from birth to 14 years old. Which is really a ton. There's people I know that haven't moved twice in their entire 35 to 40 year lifetime, And so on one of these moves, we actually moved 2 towns away. And I begged my mom. I said, "Mom, I want to keep going to this middle school. I've known these kids since kindergarten. Even though we moved in the same school district." And she agreed. So she did this bus route with me. We had to take 2 buses. The first stop was at a 7-Eleven convenience store. The next one was stopped directly on the street where my school was. And so one day I'm at my stop at this convenience store. I have a very specific routine, Saeed and Ali. Here's my routine. I would walk in. I would go directly to Mortal Kombat 2 arcade game. I would put my 2 quarters in, and I would play Mortal Kombat, and I'd be crushing it till the bus came, right? The lady Rosa, my mom met her. I knew her. I knew how much time I had. I could beat a few guys, and then I had to jump on the bus. And so one day I walk in. I'm doing my normal routine. I hear the bell ring, and within about a minute, I hear a male's voice say, "Hey, Daniel." And I just keep playing because I'm Jordan. I'm not Daniel. I just keep playing the game. And all of a sudden, my body is lifted. I'm thrown against the Terminator 2 pinball machine. There was a gun that pulled the trigger. And I was assaulted, thrown on the ground, handcuffed, and put into a police car. And mind you, I'm yelling, I'm crying. The lady at the store is yelling. The cops are cussing at this lady. They said, be quiet or we're going to take you to jail too. And so they thought I was a Hispanic runaway. Okay, so they made a couple. They made a couple mistakes that day. The
Yes,
first
they
one is
did.
my dad's from the Philippines. That was the first mistake that they made. The second one was I was not a runaway. Of course, I was just there every day doing my same normal routine. And the third mistake that they made was, they ensued violence, like brutality on a 12-year-old. And so I'm in the back of this police car, and I wasn't a great student, guys. I'm just to be honest. I didn't do my homework a lot, but I knew that I did my homework that night before. And I said to the officer, I said, "Sir, please look in the back of my London Fog jacket. Like, my homework is in there." And he reaches in the jacket, he pulls out this crumpled paper, and it says Jordan Mendoza. And man, when I tell you, the guy looked like he saw a ghost because he knew that he screwed up. And so, long story short, the officers lose their jobs. I move on. I had so much empathy at the time, just seeing things that my mom went through. I had a grandmother that had dementia and had cancer, and just kind of seeing a lot of pain. I had such a heart for people that I said, listen, they need to lose their jobs, but I don't want to take this any further than this. Like, my mom wanted to pursue court, was probably thinking about the money. We didn't have any, but for me, I was like, I just want this to be over. And I had that level of empathy at 12 to say, let's squash this.
And
That's
what's a
interesting. Yeah.
That's
So
yeah,
Said.
that's like an uncomfortable position to be put in, like racial profiling at such a young age.
Yeah.
And I mean, at the same time, you're 12. It's like how can they mistake you for someone older? I,
Man, when people get amped up, like they were probably a little revved up, maybe somebody said, "Hey, we see someone that matches the description." Like, people get the energy level gets too high, and I think something happens. You know, the endorphins, the
Yeah.
dopamine hit kicks in, and they get, they get aggressive. But like at 12, I was like 5'5", 89 pounds. Like who the heck was, who was I gonna hurt? What was I gonna do to somebody? And that's where you kind of think, and it's like they must have been, really fired up. You have to be fired up to beat up a kid.
That's true. And what's your opinion on like on these kind of situations that people have to face in the US, obviously with police
Man, I would say
discipline?
this. I'm glad it didn't happen to me like this year because I probably would have got shot.
Oh,
Just being honest, right? Like, just imagine if I would have tried to fight back. I mean, just different. Everybody reacts different in different situations. But I don't know if you remember, I had experienced a crazy thing in fourth grade, and so I had a little situational awareness that I developed, and I knew to just stay down. Like, don't try to resist arrest. Like, just kind of deal with this, and then I'm going to my thoughts, like, how can I get out of this? Like, I'm definitely not a runaway. I'm definitely not this person that they're trying to make you out. But when that happens to you, you actually feel like you did something wrong. Honestly, I was like, did I do this? Like, I don't know, because it all happens so quick and you don't know really what's going on. But no, it definitely, I mean, it teaches you how to stay calm, and in today's culture, people do the opposite. It's like people try to run, and then all of a sudden they're gone. They're gone because that officer feels like and I don't know why you shoot people running. It's like the stupidest thing ever. If someone's running, don't shoot them, chase them. Just because maybe you don't go to the gym as often as you shouldn't freaking shoot somebody. You know what I'm
isn't that
saying? Like
also
it's
isn't that also illegal for a police officer to shoot someone as they're running away?
I would think so. I mean, but again, if you see anything, and I don't even watch the news, but it still shows up on social media. It still
Yeah.
shows up somewhere. So you see this stuff happening, and it's just ridiculous sometimes. But again, we're in a place where no one wants to do the work, and so the guys that do it, they're so amped up, and you know what I'm saying. I mean, so there's a lot of things like that are happening. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
Jordan, with your brain that you have now, if that was in your 12-year-old brain, what would you have done differently? Would you have done anything differently?
Absolutely not. No, I'm sure I would have done the same exact thing, because I knew I could prove who I was. And
Yeah.
that's, it was a mistaken identity, right? I mean, essentially, it's mistaken identity. When you look like me with a last name like this, you get mistaken a lot for something that you're not. You know what I'm saying? It's bound to happen. I mean, I get people that speak Spanish to me all the time. There's some people that think, I'm Hawaiian. I mean, just because of the way I look, people make their assumptions, right? And assumptions aren't always right, as we know.
Yeah. I think I'm lucky with like being a bit neutral in a sense, because like I always get mistaken for like so many different uh like ethnicities, and my name is okay, it's Arabic origins, but it's not like a very pop out name, not a very common name like Ahmad or Ahmad or something like that. So when they see my name, it's like, oh, okay. It's like, what is that? And it's just like it's a bit confusing to them because I've been
Yeah.
mistaken for a Latino multiple times, and like I've been mistaken for someone from Ecuador or for Peru or even Colombia, and it was the mistake was coming from other Spanish speaking people, like other Latinos.
Yep.
And
Well,
it
I
was
don't.
just very funny.
So adversity is an interesting thing, right? I don't know if you guys have read Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, where in talks about, with every adversity comes an equal and greater opportunity. And it's funny because although I was beaten and falsely arrested at 12, in 2021, somebody nominated me as like a top 10 Latino on LinkedIn. Right? So there's a little bit of redemption, right? I'm
That's
an
funny.
honorary Latino in 2022, and in the 90s I was beaten and falsely arrested for being Latino. So, I think things always come back around for the good. And so I always think
That's funny.
that's interesting that people, they confuse you, or they think that you're something, and then they award you for it, and it's like, hey, I appreciate it. It's an honor because I've seen
And,
the other end. I've been on the other end, and it's not a fun end to be on.
were you like scared, or were you just like without
Yeah,
emotion?
in the moment, of course.
Mhm.
Yeah, scared, crying, like confused, all of that in the moment. You're
Mhm.
dealing with that. But they sent me to a psychologist. I had to, look at all the black and white picture. They're asking me questions about, like, do you hate cops? Like, what do you see? They were doing all that, and
Wow.
nothing had changed for me.
Hmm.
And I almost felt like they were trying to get me to say something. You know what I'm saying? I could kind of
Yeah.
Yes,
sense that,
exactly.
and I was like, no, that's a bird. Like, like, you know what I'm saying? But it's interesting going through that process because again, you see it when you see it on TV and when you see it in the movies, it's always like, this person is highly impacted for the long haul, right? And for me, that just wasn't the case. And I don't know if that's from seeing, having the empathy from seeing my mom get. My mom almost died several times before she died at 54. I mean, I've been in the hospital. I've communicated when she had a tracheotomy with pen and paper and had to talk to each other that way. I've seen some hard stuff. And so I
Yeah.
think that level of empathy truly helped me when that process was taking place.
You mentioned when you were nominated on LinkedIn as top 10 Latinos in the world. Um, do you think that racial identity is crucial in a person's life, or is it just something that they choose, whether it's an important aspect of their personality or their lifestyle, anything of the sort?
I mean, as someone that's of mixed race that grew up in the U.S.,
Hmm.
I think it's important if it's important. I think it's up to the individual to decide, right? Because I mean, you see a lot of American born anything, and they
Hmm.
don't speak the language. They don't
Yeah.
go to the participate in the holiday. You know what I'm saying? They kind of are doing their thing. They identify that that's part of their race, but they don't officially, I guess, do all of the stuff to claim it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they've
And
more adopted the American culture, you'd say.
yeah, they've essentially adopted it as American, and for me, like I didn't even meet my dad until I was 12. Actually, I met my dad the year that happened at 12 years old. It's the first time I met my dad, and he actually lived in Washington D.C. and he had a landscaping business, and so that's a whole other podcast, right? Of like going and meeting a guy from the Philippines and getting immersed in a culture for a whole summer and like what that looked like, and he had money and we got to do things, and I went back home to being poor. I mean, that's a whole other show, right? But those are all things that have really helped shape and mold me, and getting to go to the Philippines at 16, what a
Yeah.
great experience that was, and be there for 3 months and truly see what poverty looks like, and realize that even though I was poor on paper in the States, I had it real good compared to life in the Philippines. I wasn't pumping my own water. I wasn't using a small bucket and a big bucket as my bath and shower. I wasn't out there in the frickin' rice paddies trying to, bring in the dinner. You know what I'm
Uh,
saying? Like,
yeah,
I could go to McDonald's and I had a shower, and you know what I'm saying? And so it really shifted my perspective at
yeah.
16 and filled my heart. You mentioned gratitude, Ali, earlier. It filled my heart with such a sense of gratitude for what I had. I mean, I was seeing kids in the mountains at this park called Mines View Park in Baguio City, Philippines, where you're overlooking these beautiful mountains, and you look down below and there's all these shacks and shanties, and you look further down and there's kids, ingenuitive entrepreneur kids that have found the biggest bamboo sticks they could find. They attach a basket to the end of it, and they're holding those things up so the tourists can throw money down. I
Wow.
mean, you talk about
Whoa.
creativity and you talk about figuring out a way to provide for your family. I mean, those kids were doing it. Another thing I noticed is we went out to the landfill, and we are bringing stuff there, and there's kids everywhere waiting. They're waiting for it so they could pick through it and then bring whatever back to their families. And so, man, you want to talk about a shift in your world? Go to a third world country. Like
Yeah.
that's the best field trip you can take, folks, is go experience what life is like somewhere else where people don't have the luxuries that we have.
Yeah.
This was First trip was in '96. They were dressing like it was '76. Like they're a couple decades behind in stuff. Man, that was massive for me. And I think getting a sense of the culture and the history and family and learning the language and kind of getting immersed in that, for me, it was an honor.
Yeah, completely agree on that point, especially the concept of traveling, because us on the podcast, we've on countless times mentioned that traveling is a type of like education by itself, especially if you're going to third world countries. I mean, me and Ali, we grew up in a third world country. We know the bucket shower thing. We've
Yep.
experienced it, and
Yep, all the lizards crawling around in your house, and I was catching them, and people are like, "Don't touch them." Like,
yeah, it's definitely like a lesson in itself. And traveling in general, just exposing yourself to different cultures and different people, seeing different lifestyles, it opens up your mind and just allows you to be
100%.
a different person than just if you stick to your own bubble and you're just like being exposed to the same routines and the same mentality, same mindset.
Yep.
I feel like it's like a recommendation. If you want to become successful, it's a very important and a crucial point in your life to go travel, especially to,
100%.
like you said, a third world country.
Yeah, when I finished high school at 18, I left. I left at 18, moved to Seattle. From there, I moved to California. From there, traveled all over the country, doing sales. And what a great experience, right? You talk about learning different cultures, different states, different rules, different laws, different people. And man, it definitely helped to enrich my life by going through all those different experiences. And I want to get to pivotal moment number 3, right?
Go
You've
for
kind of
it.
seen I've been through a little bit of adversity, but I
Mm-hmm.
tend to look through the lens of positivity and what did I gain from this, not what did this thing take away from me. And so at
Before you go into that,
19, yeah.
can I just ask, what are your like top three suggested locations for people to go to where they can learn something from it?
In the US or just in the
No, no,
world, or
abroad, yeah, and in the world.
yeah, I mean, go to Manila. Go to Manila, Philippines, and go to any one of the mega malls, and you're gonna see life moving so fast. I mean, these places are like 5 or 6 stories, and they're just abundant with people, and there's just so much happening, and so much bartering going on, and negotiations. I mean, you're gonna learn a lot by going to Manila, into one of those mega malls. It's just a completely different experience than in the U.S. Another unique experience, and we'll stay in the topic of the Philippines, is go to a wet market. So a wet market is where all the bloody meat's hanging, and
Yeah.
you guys have seen, you know what I'm talking about, right? That's where you get COVID. Right? That's where you get probably. That's where you get a lot of things probably. But again, it's a very third world thing where you've got, I mean, just raw meat hanging, and
Oh
you
my
get to kind of
God.
pick out your cuts, and then like it's a unique, smelly but unique experience, So those are some places I would say to check out, and then really, like, I would say, if for people in the U.S., get out and see some of the big states. And what I mean by that, Oregon, Washington, Montana, Wyoming, these places that just have so much abundance of land and really show you how small you are. Go experience that. The Grand Canyon, what a beautiful place. Sedona, Arizona. Some places that you go, and it's just a different experience energy-wise. Just different places on Earth actually provide different experiences for you. So I would say that Niagara Falls, I mean, what a great place. I got to do one of the boat rides underneath the falls, and you want to realize how powerful water is, go to Niagara Falls, and it's a lot different than just a bath or a little tiny waterfall. So some of those places I would say definitely go out and check them out.
Hmm. That's a great answer, and I hope people are listening are gonna at least
Mhm.
try some of these suggestions.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think
Yeah,
now we're
so
on to pivotal
yeah,
point number 3 now,
that's
right?
it. Yeah, so 19, right? I'm doing the sales thing, and when I talk about sales, like, we would literally go business to business. We're the people walking in. We're giving you a sales pitch, and we might walk out with money, right? Like that was the type of sales that we did. And we also did door to door. So knocking on people's doors, 100 doors a day in the heat, in the snow, like whatever the climate was. So when you're doing that type of sales, the first thing I will say is you got to have a bulletproof mindset. You have to understand that it's a numbers game, that you have to, the more people you see, the more money you're going to make, right? If you lose your attitude, people are going to tell. They can read your facial expressions. They can see if you've lost your attitude. And so, we were actually going to open an office. We were in California. We were going to open a new office in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, just to kind of give context. That's probably like 2,600 miles different. So all the way across the country. And so on this trip, we had a caravan of about 4 cars, and we decided to take the scenic route. We went from the Bay Area. We went down to Salt Lake City, right? You got to check places out. You got to see what these places are like. Went down to Vegas, went up to Phoenix, went to Sedona, Arizona, which I had mentioned as a place to check out. And then we were finally getting our way into Wyoming. And by the time we get to Wyoming, it's about 4 a.m. It's very late. For anyone that's watching or is going to listen to this, if you've ever been in Wyoming, there is nothing in Wyoming. It's flat. It's desolate. There's not a gas station for 40 miles. It's not a place you want to be late at night. And in fact, there's more fatalities on I-80 than any other stretch of freeway in the country because of that fact. And so we're on that exact stretch of highway, and I'm in this truck, a Chevy King Cab truck. My buddy Jeremy's driving. There's 2 other passengers in the front, and I was situated seating sideways in the back, like kind of facing out the driver's side area. Just there's boxes and stuff. And so it's 4 something in the morning. My buddy Jeremy falls asleep at the wheel. So the truck literally, I was asleep. The truck slides and north of 70 miles an hour because he overcorrected the wheel. And then immediately we just start flipping, and it just flip. Several times the truck finally lands. The truck lands, and I just remember yelling, "Holy crap," like 3 times, and the truck lands. So the 2 people in front of me, they get out. I climb out. Our buddy Jeremy, nowhere to be found. He got ejected from the windshield, and he actually landed 25 yards away from where the truck landed. And so our whole caravan, we were all going out. We're searching for him. We finally find our friend, and he just looks dead. I mean, he looks gone. But then all of a sudden, he stands up, yells something, and falls back down. And we were like, oh my gosh, like we got to find him help. So we had some guardian angels that day because a couple off-duty EMTs were at a conference in Colorado. They literally happened to drive just as the accident had completed. And so they got out, they ran, they called an ambulance. They called a helicopter for our buddy. He got life-flighted to Casper. I actually didn't realize I was hurt because of the adrenaline. And all of a sudden, I started smelling a very irony smell. And I reached in my right leg, and it went into my leg about a fist deep, my hand did. And I had a cut 12 inches long on my right leg, a fist deep, an 8-inch cut on my left leg. I had to have 52 staples between both legs, and I was told, you may not walk again. And my buddy got life-flighted. He had to have brain surgery. The good news in all of this is I made a 6-month recovery after I was told I may not walk again. 6 months from accident to me being able to go play basketball again or to run again. Just incredible. My buddy Jeremy made a full recovery. Now he's got a beautiful wife and 3 kids. It's crazy because if you looked at the truck, Saeed and Ali, if you look at where I was supposed to be sitting, the whole thing was smashed in like a dang tuna can. There's no reason any of us should have survived or walked away from that. And one of the craziest parts of the story is in Utah, we were in a Walmart parking lot. Me and my buddy Branderis, we actually almost got in a fist fight. You were young, 19, 18, and we were trying to fight at who got to ride in the cool truck. Okay, which is the truck that I rode in, and I ended up winning the fight. I won the argument. I was the guy that ended up being in the truck. And I remember when I woke up in that hospital bed, the first person I saw was Branderis, and I just looked in his face and I said, I'm glad it was me. Because I was like, what if Branderis would have won the fight? What if he wouldn't have been sitting where I was sitting? Like, we could have lost our friend, And so it's one of those things where you think about it and it's like I think
was
I was
meant to be.
supposed to be there, right?
Yeah.
And maybe I was also supposed to be there because I argued and I was arrogant. You know what I'm saying? And so there's some lessons that you can take away in everything in life, right? And for
Yeah.
me, I'm grateful, and it's why you'll see me on LinkedIn or Instagram or on TikTok posting breakdancing videos, because I shouldn't be able to do this at 41. I shouldn't be able to do windmills and spin and be as active. I play basketball 3 or 4 days a week. I'm running. I could get off the couch and not running and go run 5 miles. It shouldn't be possible. And so for me, that just I know that there is for one, I'm here for a higher purpose. I'm here. My story's not done yet. There's still some fuel left in my tank, right? And so what I believe that is to truly help others blaze their own trail in business and life, to realize that no matter what your circumstances are, no matter what you've gone through, you can still have success. You can still build something that you want. You can blaze a trail out there. You just have to be willing to put forth the effort. You have to be willing to step up to the plate and do things that might feel a little uncomfortable. But the truth is, instability creates stability, not the other way around. And most people get it wrong. They feel like they have to be stable in order to fit into unstable situations, but you actually have to feel a little bit of instability to learn how to become stable.
And that's why you're so excited by all these
That's
dramatic
it.
moments and stuff like that.
That's it.
Wow. If you look back and you were like, would you be like, I wish it never happened to me, or
Oh
like,
no,
it's just
I'm
part of who I
grateful.
am?
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm grateful. If this type of stuff didn't happen, I wouldn't have a lot of the success that I've had, because I'm able to show people that it's possible to overcome. It's possible. You haven't even heard the whole story yet, right? Like my wife wasn't supposed to have kids either, and in fact, our first was a miscarriage. Like, talk about a tough thing to go through, losing. You get excited about having a child, and then you lose a child. I mean, the adversity is not going to stop. It doesn't stop for anybody, but we, right, as humans, we get to determine what we do with it. Can we leverage it for success, or can we have it bring us down? Because again, there's always a choice. There's always two sides to a coin, and we get to determine what that is, what that looks like. And I choose to look through a positive lens, even when there's utter chaos happening. I always find good in it. My wife's like, man, you always say, but the good news is, because I'm always trying to look at the optimistic side. And not everyone chooses to do that, and that's fine. But there's a lot of value in trying to look at the positive.
The way that you've picked out lessons from all of these traumatic events in your life, it's not a simple thing. And a lot of people, whenever they would have something like this, they just, they'd give up, or they say it's a sign for me to quit. I kind of I want to know from you, like, what's an underrated skill to have when you're facing these kind of traumatic events? What is the most underrated skill to have to help you through these situations?
Oh man,
Something that maybe people don't talk about that much.
I would say processing. Being able to actually process and dissect what you're feeling when you're feeling it, and a lot of that comes down to self-awareness. Self-awareness is so underrated. And I
was hoping you'd say that, actually.
Yeah, I used to teach a 6-month leadership program, and one of the sessions that I taught on was on emotional intelligence. And of course, the 4 buckets of EQ. It's self-awareness, being able to understand yourself in situations, self-management, how do you manage your emotions, and then we get into social settings and relationship management. And my biggest area, it's funny, when I took the assessment, I was actually a little mad. I went to the instructor and I was like, this is wrong. Like this, I do not agree with this. I don't believe. And she's like, tell me more. Let me know why you're feeling this. And I said, well, I scored low for relationship management. And she said, okay, well, tell me, how are you at building relationships? I'm like, I'm the guy that gets all my friends together when I go back in town. I do this and I do that. She's like, well, do you think that let's look at your sheet? And in fact, I scored myself low because I was the one that filled it out. And it's because it came natural to me. Relationships are easy. It's what I do. It's my bread and butter. It's not hard for me. It's something I'm very skilled at. It's building relationships with people, and so I didn't see that as a strength. Does that make sense? And so when you take an EQ assessment, I'm just giving this to your audience. Don't always hold everything with a grain of salt. Don't always take everything as where it is. Challenge it a little bit, because you might be wrong like I was, and actually you're the one that did it because you didn't even recognize it was a strength for you. But let's go back to self-awareness. Self-awareness is everything. If you can understand yourself, how you're wired, another thing I would highly encourage people to do to understand themselves is take some type of personality assessment. Okay, and again, the personality assessments, they're not the end-all be-all, but they give us a baseline of how we're wired. You know, when you can understand how you're wired and the preferences that you have, it actually starts to give you grace for other people and understanding that people are different than you. When I took MBTI and eventually became a certified practitioner, and I use it with clients still to this day, I had my wife take it. And man, there were so many big epiphanies, and us sitting on our kitchen floor crying because she's like, you're not an idiot. Like, it's just how you're wired. You know, like you do this thing because of this. And then we were able to really connect on a deeper level and have a different sense of grace for each other, because we realized that, you know what, we're not the same, and we shouldn't be. Now, again, we are way more, okay, this is important, we are way more than our type. Okay, so don't ever use type as a crutch, because in life, you have to actually flex. Like, I'm naturally an extroverted person, but there are times when I have to shift to introversion. Does that make sense? And so I naturally want to be the life of the party, but there's times when I may have to kind of turn that off and turn that back a little bit. You know, and if we don't flex, and I'll tell you this for anyone that is in a relationship or a marriage, or maybe you aspire to be, if you don't flex, it's not going to last, folks. If you aren't flexible, and if you don't understand, you know, when even though you may prefer things a certain way, that you have to flex and put a different hat on, it's not going to be a success. Take it from a guy that's been with, you know, together with someone for 2 decades, okay, and made a lot of mistakes along the way. So.
Amazing. I'm curious to hear about the fourth story and the fourth pivotal moment too.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. That fourth one. This is the one. This is the one that hit different, right? And so I get a call in November of 2011. You know, just to kind of set up context. At this point, I went from doing all the traveling sales guy stuff to, you know, we had our first child. We were really struggling. We were living with my wife's grandmother. I called my dad to help us, which I never do, and he agrees to let us move in for a month. Right? Some tough love. He's like, yeah, we'll help you for a month, and then you're going to get your own place and all that. So we end up moving from Georgia to Maryland, and I end up doing landscaping with my dad. And so just rewind a little bit. When I was 12, met my dad. That summer, he put me to dang work. You know, I learned real fast how much I hated landscaping, because I was picking up sticks. I was weed eating, mowing, blowing, you name it, transplanting, learning about plants, and I had zero interest in it. But at 12, fast forward now, I'm 22. I'm a decade in, bro. Like, I've got
That's an interesting way to to freeze it.
And that's the podcast. See you.
I think I lost you there for a second.
Yeah.
So
landscaping.
Yeah. So I end up, you know, doing landscaping, right, as a 12-year-old, and so you fast forward. I'm now, you know, 22 with a newborn, moving back. I have a decade of experience at this point. Okay, so I end up leading his crew. I've got a crew of 5 guys that I'm leading in landscaping. This is back in like 2005. None of them speak English, so I'm having to pick up Spanish again, which I failed in high school, you know, and lead this crew around. We're doing 35 houses a day. 35 houses, guys, a day. Wow. Landscape, weeding, blowing, picking up sticks. Some of them were mulching, rock gardens, you name it. We're knocking this stuff out. Well, it was all great from spring until about, you know, September, October. But once all the leaves were gone, guess what comes in Washington, D.C.? Snow. And can you cut grass in the snow? You could try. didn't fail. It's not going to work, right? Can you put mulch out in the snow? So I lost that income source. My dad's like, "Oh, it's winter." I'm like, he's like, "Yeah, so unfortunately we can't work." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm back to the drawing board again." So I had to get a job, and so I got a job selling windows, which I sucked at until my very last day. I sold $10,000 in windows, but and then I took a job with another company, which is pretty crazy. So I get this job with a property management company in doing leasing. So if you ever rented an apartment, guys, you ever had the person that showed you around, that was me. So I was a leasing agent. I did so well at sales that in 6 months they promoted me to assistant property manager, which was the worst decision they could have made because I hated math. And I went from, they took the top sales guy and they made me a glorified bookkeeper and collection agent. So because I hated it so much, I excelled so fast. 9 months later, they made me a property manager. And now I went from leasing, not knowing anything about property management or multifamily housing, to managing multi-millions in real estate and feeling like I don't know what I'm doing. So that's kind of my intro into property management. So if we fast back forward to this pivotal moment in 2011, I now have about 5-6 years experience in property management. I'm managing a community in Atlanta, 558 units. I have 24 employees. Okay, so I've grown some, right? And so I'm like kind of at the top of my game, and I get a call from my mom, and she says, "Hey, Jordan, I fell. Want to let you, I'm okay. They're just running some tests." And that was the last time I heard my mom's voice. Was that time, because she got sick, she got pneumonia, she was hospitalized, her kidneys started to fail, her heart started to fail, and it was all because of the capacity of having one lung from that 54 years. And man, that was tough. 3 months of traveling out to the West Coast, visiting the hospital. For some reason, I got, even though there was 5 of us boys and I have an older brother, I was appointed kind of the point of contact. And so dealing with the doctors, making all these decisions, doing all this stuff, man. And that was tough. And I got demoted, which is actually the best thing that probably could have happened, because I wasn't in the game. My head was elsewhere. I have a sick mom that was dying. And in March of 2012, on the 9th, I get a call from my brother that she was gone. And man, when I tell you that, 3 months her being sick and the 3 months after, I don't remember. I remember waking up and getting in the car. I don't remember how I got to work. I remember kind of a little bit of the day. I don't remember driving home, and it was just this fog for 6 months. But during that time and getting that demotion, it allowed me some breathing room, because when you suffer loss, especially for a guy like me that loved my mom to death, I was a mama's boy for sure, talked once or twice a day. When you go from that to not being able to hear them, and you're never going to be able to say what you want to say to them or speak to them again, I mean, it was a dark place. And so while I was in this new property that they demoted me at, I was able to build a team there and have them have success and get promoted, and people in corporate recognize that, and I got an opportunity to apply for a training role, and then that sent me on a journey of 8 years in training and development. Got to teach a leadership program for 3 years, and all that stuff showed me that there's more out there. And I started to realize that, I'm making a great impact for this company. I'm coaching people. I'm putting people through leadership cohorts, and they're telling me their life is different. Their life has changed. They understand more about themselves. And I just said one day, I was like, you know what? If I stay in corporate, I'm not going to be able to impact people out there. I'm not going to be able to impact, the large number of people I want to impact. And so, in January of 21, I decided to blaze my own trail. I've been talking about it for 2 years on the dang podcast, and I blazed my own trail to start my business. And man, it's been off to the races since then.
Damn, what a run, man! It's like all of these four moments that you've mentioned. Also, like they've each one has like the way I'm breaking it down is a different lesson of physical, mental, and emotional adversity. Like
Yeah.
it's just teaching you how to become stronger in each different aspect of the human self, and how they formed you as you are right now, as the person you've become. And I really believe when you mentioned also self-awareness, without it, I don't think you'd have been able to become the person you are now.
Oh, no, no, 100% no. Yeah, there's no way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and,
And
and another thing is identifying your strengths. I'm a big believer in the strength finder assessment, trying to identify what your strengths are and then actually taking time to strengthen your strengths. Most people focus on strengthening weaknesses, and so their strengths actually start to diminish a little bit. But when you can actually focus on, your God-given gifts and abilities and make those even better, in my experience, that's really, really is transformational.
no, I completely
Um,
agree.
I'm just curious. So, I mean, I'm learning a lot from your story, and it's like, inspiring me and making me reflect on the things that happened to me in my past. Um, what do you, how would you suggest someone to grow? Um, like, see, all these events happen outside of your control, right? Like,
Yep.
um, well, what if they don't happen, right?
Yep.
Then how are you supposed to grow the way you did? How are you supposed to create that growth without? Because I agree, like every time I have a downturn, it's led to a way bigger upturn,
Sure. Yep.
And so I don't know, what are your thoughts on
Yeah, I mean, I think I,
growth?
I think
Hmm.
that you can't compare your story to someone else's. That's the first thing I would tell
Hmm.
you. We all have our own. We all, and something that may be easy for me could be hard for someone else, and vice versa. So that's the one thing is I never. I always tell people, when it comes to building your brand, like in business or in life, you tell as much of your story as you're comfortable sharing, and not a drop more, right? That's important. And for me, I'm very comfortable in sharing context because, again, my goal is to inspire. It's to show people that, hey, no matter what has happened, right? Growing up poor, that's one thing. There's a lot of people that grew up poor, right? Getting racially profiled, like that happens to a lot of people every day. I'm sure hundreds and hundreds of people, right? So it's usually not one, but I've had kind of the trifecta plus some of things, and so I can relate to a lot of audiences out there, and so that's why I share the way that I do. But like you said, Saeed, there's lessons, right? I think that's the most important thing because whatever your down looks like, Ali, there's going to be a lesson. And I think the goal should be is what can I extract out of this? And it's hard while you're in it to see it. It's always when you're on that uphill climb when you're able to look back and extract what that lesson is, right? Because I could tell you this, when I'm being beaten or being stung or in this accident and being rushed to you know what I'm saying? There's no lesson there. It sucks. It's
Yeah.
because you're in it in that moment. But I think too often what I see is that people don't bring it out. You have to talk about it. You have to share it with other people, and that's when you start to realize the value in your story. Okay, and honestly, my mom's story is what it was actually shine the light on my own because I didn't really before 2019, 2018. I didn't even talk about my mom's stuff. And when I started sharing hers, I started to reflect back on what I had been through and said, I've got a dang story of my own. I've got a story to tell. And if it impacts one, if I can inspire one person a day, then I feel like my job is done. I think the worst thing that you can do is if you have a story or a message to share is not share it, is to not actually push it out to the world.
I'm inspired. You got me.
Definitely, me
It
too.
worked. One more thing I'm gonna ask is like, so not like, do you look forward to things going rough your way? Like when something gets rough, you're like, okay, here we go.
No, I don't think it's like that. I'm not like a storm chaser. I'm not like an adversity chaser where I'm like, there's a wild pack of wolves. Let me go jump into that den over there. No, it's not like that. But I think it's just more that I'm confident that I'm going to be able to figure it out. It gives you this sense of there's not going to be a situation that's too big. Does that make sense? And now that's a lot though. That's a lot because again, there could be a number of things going on, and I actually thrive in chaos. And why I think it's because I've been through chaos. You end up kind of adopting the things that you've been through, and so when those situations take place, when there's a fight or flight situation, I kind of am squared up and I know how to deal with that, if that makes sense.
It's like you're more prepared for these situations. Yeah.
Yeah, it's preparedness, and again, yeah, like adversity. I said it earlier, but it gives you strength. And there's a quote I'd love to share with you guys and with your audience that I actually wrote in 2019. I didn't know how much I would need it in 2020 with the pandemic that happened, and it's still adding value to people, even in 2022. And so, what the quote is that the struggle might be real, but the good news is that every struggle comes with a free gift called a lesson. And if you can really think about it that way, it is true, right?
Very true.
Again, but it's up to us, like I said before, to extract those lessons. And it's not going to happen while you're in the heat of the battle. It's going to typically take place when you're on that uphill climb.
Wow. Jordan, we're kind of wrapping up on time now, and that's a beautiful quote.
Sure.
Saeed, do you have any thing you want to ask before we wrap up here?
No, for me, I think
I told you we weren't going to talk about business till the end, right? Did I do okay with that?
Yeah.
Is that helpful?
No.
Okay.
I think we might need to do another podcast for business.
There we go.
I've learned so much, and there's still I've learned so much from you. Thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah, the fun thing